Okay, let's talk about the 11th pick. I haven't talked to you in a couple weeks. I don't know about you. If you're like me, the more I watch these draft prospects, the more my opinions change, right? Every
Yeah,
time I
of
watch
course.
somebody, there's guys that 2 weeks ago I didn't like as much that I like more today. There's guys that 2 weeks ago I liked a lot more and I like them less now. To me, it's as we get closer to the draft and I start watching more, I typically like the prospects less because there's a failure rate in these guys and you start to see why.
Yeah.
That all being said, how have your last couple weeks gone? Do you have thoughts on what you'd like to see the Niners do at 11? Do you have you heard things? Do you have insights or have you have sources of things that you've heard, whispers that you've heard about what they may or may not do at 11?
Yeah, the NFL draft process is so fascinating because things change so much in our evaluations of these prospects from the college season into bowl season and the college football playoff to in the lead up to the NFL combine to after the NFL combine. And then after that, you're far removed from the previous year where you really start to dive into more of your draft research, prep, and film study that things change even more, especially in the 2 weeks in the lead up to the draft. And so my opinions on a lot of these players, like you, like others, have changed a lot over the last several months because film study, context, workouts, pro day, combine, all of that, the context really matters. As we get closer to the draft, I think it becomes more realistic that at number 11, Armand Membu, Will Campbell are not there, and the Niners go defensive line with the 11th overall pick, and then they go offensive line in round two. And I'm fine with that. If at 43, Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota is available, I am rushing that pick to the podium and I'm making that selection as quickly as possible. I truly believe that he can end up being one of the top offensive tackles in this class. And if you get him at 43 with the really good value there, I'm cool with it. Great size, a lot of experience, very comfortable in space, outside zone blocker. In his pass sets, there's some room to grow and develop there, but the athleticism, the size, the physicality, and the experience, all things that I like. And so if you go offensive tackle 43, that's okay. You address a massive need. That probably means that you went defensive line with number 11. And so the closer that we get to the draft, the more I think the Niners go either Shamar Stewart at number 11, Jalen Walker, if he's there, maybe Michael Williams. If Mason Graham falls, I wouldn't be surprised at that, or a Walter Nolan or a Derek Harmon. I think those are the players that the Niners are kind of honing in on. And that's the feeling and the sense that I get as we get closer to the draft, that they don't go offensive tackle with number 11. Instead, they go edge or defensive tackle. And I think that they can pick up a really good player. I also would not be surprised at all if the Niners trade back a little bit. Let's say you trade back from 11 to that 15 to 19 range, and you can still get a Walter Nolan or a Derek Harmon. And then that allows you to move up and get an earlier second round pick, maybe even get to that 30 to 32 range where you can get another player who you really like while still keeping a premium second round pick. And then in the first 45 picks, what if you're able to pick two or three high level players who can be starters from the jump or turn into starters very soon and be high level impact players as a rookie? I don't hate that strategy either. But you asked about number 11, those grouping of players. I just think that the Niners go that route. What would I do? I love Mike Green out of Marshall. If the
I saw that.
character stuff and the personal stuff works out, I think that he could be a tremendous sidekick alongside Nick Bosa. And I think the game translates to the next level. Twitch, bend, speed, explosiveness, instincts, college production, 17 sacks, 23 TFLs. He's really good at collapsing the pocket, getting to the quarterback, being disruptive there, but he's smart and instinctual in a way where he's really good against the run. And I would love to see what Robert Saleh and Chris Kosar can do with a player like that. So Mike Green and probably Jalen Walker are my top two edge rushers that I would love to see go to the Niners at number 11. At defensive tackle, if Mason Graham is there, you pick him. I love Walter Nolan. I like Derek Harmon. I'm not a Shamar Stewart guy like you are. I know that the pressure numbers are there. I know he's an athletic freak. I love how his nickname is the Maniac because he plays like that through the whistle and sometimes past the whistle. I think in a wide 9, he might be a better pro as compared to being a college player. But when I'm taking a player that early, I just simply need to see more production. He didn't finish as far as sacks. He didn't finish as far as missed tackles. And you're a Texas A&M guy, and I've heard you acknowledge that. We've seen so many times these athletic players wow you at the NFL Combine, wow you as far as their body type. But the lack of production ends up being and ringing true at the NFL level. And so for a player that gifted, to have 1.5 sacks in each of the last 3 years, I just need to see a little bit more. Would I trust the Niners player development program and their coaching to bring the best out of a player like that? For sure. But I'd rather have a more proven player like a Mike Green or a Jalen Walker. And for people to say, Mike Green, small school guy, no way. He originally went to Virginia.
Marshall. Well,
he originally went to Virginia, and then he went to Marshall. And if you turn on the tape against Ohio State, he had a great game against Ohio State. And that's an offensive line where 3 or 4 of those players are going to get drafted this year, and 3 of them are going to go high. And so those are kind of my thoughts with the 11th pick, and then kind of the strategy looking to round 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't view, first of all, quality competition is always a big deal, but I mean, I think David Walker's tremendous, and yet he played at Central Arkansas. So, it's, Charles Haley went to the Hall of Fame. He played at James Madison. Yeah. Great players come from, all walks of life and all areas. It's not always
Randy Moss went to Marshall.
Right. And then not only that, there's and here, my only thing on Mike Green, I love Mike Green. I think Mike Green is an awesome player, but I don't think he's a first and second down, 4-3, hand in the dirt, stand up against a 325-pound offensive tackle. I think you could wash him out pretty easily. And your run defense, he's going to have a hard time setting the edge against in the NFL as a 4-3, hand in the dirt defensive end.
Yeah, he's more of a stand-up guy. But Bosa's done that from time to time. Leonard Floyd did that last year. D Ford sometimes did that. So, yeah, I hear you there, though.
Matt Barrows also kind of had this note. He said that he doesn't think the Niners will take Mike Green or James Pierce at 11 due to character concerns. I haven't done the due diligence on, I don't have that information. I don't really want that information. If I stumble across it, I don't mind. But, I don't know.
For Mike Green, there were 2 sexual assault allegations, one in high school, one at Virginia. That was the reason why he was suspended by Virginia in 2022, never found guilty of either. And then people in Dane Brugler's draft guide, he had noted that the coaching staffs at Virginia and Marshall have nothing but good things to say about him. But obviously that's a huge red flag, something like that. And that could keep a team from taking him at number 11. And I wouldn't blame them at all. I wouldn't blame that at all. I just really like the player. And I think Mike Green has that type of Von Miller game that I think translates very well to the next level.
Super explosive, all kinds of moves. The spin move. He's got 5 different moves. He's got moves on top of moves. He can set you up with all kinds of moves.
And that's why I don't love Shamar Stewart. He lacks some of those moves.
He has no moves.
Yeah,
it's a bull literally has no moves. Yeah. It's funny. Tony Pauline says the Niners are choosing between Shamar Stewart and Walter Nolan at 11. And if that were the case, I think I would go with Walter Nolan, and I would try to trade back in either case to get more picks, because I think the real sweet spot in this draft is 3, 4, 5. If you can pile up some picks in 3, 4, and 5, I think you're going to be really, really happy. What do you think of Nolan as far as what's the downside of Nolan? Some people say he doesn't love football, but his numbers against the run and the pass are good. He was, 5-star in high school. He played well at A&M. I transferred to Ole Miss. They didn't make the playoff, but it wasn't because of him. I thought he was a pretty dominating player. I see Chris Jones. I see a guy who can play all over the line, maybe even defensive end. I think Walter Nolan would be my pick. If it came down to Shamar Stewart or Walter Nolan, I'd take Walter Nolan.
I'm going Walter Nolan every single day and again on Sunday.
Yeah.
And this is a player who is around 300 pounds. He's very explosive. He's very twitchy for that size at defensive tackle. I don't see the lack of love for football at all. In fact, I see a player who has a great motor, who plays every single play out until the whistle is blown, and sometimes has aggressiveness after the whistle. And frankly, I think the Niners need a little bit of that chippiness, that swagger. You lose that with Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. You have it with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. You have it with Diamador Lenore. You have that type of personality at defensive coordinator with Robert Saleh. You need that in a player like Walter Nolan. Now, Shamar Stewart has that too. That's why they call him the maniac. But you have the production with Walter Nolan. And I know at Texas A&M, it didn't work out well for him. But think about all the Texas A&M players who might go in round one, round two, who didn't have good production, right? Shamar Stewart, the aforementioned player, Nick Scorton, Walter Nolan, and so
Shamar Turner.
Shamar Turner is another one. The scheme usage is something that people note to for why these players were kind of capped and they didn't fulfill their potential. And while it didn't work out for Nolan at Texas A&M, he goes to Ole Miss. He was a big NIL signing by them. Everybody loved him within that program. And he's good as a pass rusher, very disruptive there. But you noted it too. He's really good against the run. And I'm tired of seeing these Niners defensive tackles who can't stop the run. They can rush the passer, but Walter Nolan can do that, and he can be a run stuffer. And so I know he's slid down and is farther down on a lot of teams' draft boards, but when you have a player who was the number one overall recruit coming out of high school, who has had sustained production in college, who is 300 pounds, who is fast, twitch, get off, explosive, who's a dual threat player as far as pressuring the quarterback, collapsing the pocket right from the interior, and then you can stop the run as well. I just think that that player can be really good for a long time. It's a massive position of need for San Francisco. And I've really developed an infatuation with Walter Nolan in the pre-draft process where, yeah, I'm fine with taking him at number 11. And shoot, if the draft board falls your way, depending on how many quarterbacks go inside the top 10, causing other players to drop, and you trade back a little bit to take Nolan, and then you get another pick, even better right there.
There's a guy that you got to check out that I didn't watch this guy because I don't watch a lot of Tulane football. But they have a defensive lineman named Aiden Huntington. Are you familiar with this guy?
Not too familiar, no.
Okay, so he went from Kent State to Louisiana Monroe to Tulane. He's 6'1", 270, 275, but he's an edge rusher. And he met recently with the Niners and the Cowboys. And, you know, he's definitely Tulane's most explosive athlete. The scouting report, I mean, the guy had 15 and a half career sacks. He's considered to be really twitchy off the edge. But he definitely is like thick and short and but explosively powerful. What do you view as, okay, so if D tackle is the play in the first round, what do you want to see on day two? You know, Tony Pauline says that Dorian Strong, a corner from Vatech, is on their list, and that Oladejo, the defensive end from UCLA, are on their list on day two. Would you be happy with if they go D tackle in round one? Do they have to go offensive line in round two and round three, or round 2 or 3, or do you play best player available? Do you want that corner? Do you want the edge? How do you view, if defensive tackle is the primary, what's the secondary?
I would say edge or offensive tackle. And so the first 2 days of the draft, that's rounds 1 through 3. And I think that some semblance of picks in the first 3 rounds, you have to come away with a defensive tackle, an edge rusher, an offensive tackle, and probably a corner. Like, those are the biggest needs for me by far on this Niners team. You can figure center and left guard out in the mid to late rounds. You can figure linebacker out in the later rounds with a player like Teddy Buchanan. But defensive tackle, edge, right tackle, and cornerback, I think by far are like the biggest needs on this team. And then there's a pretty steep drop to everything else. This is a deep tight end class. This is a deep running back class. This is a deep defensive tackle class. And I think that you can find quality players, especially with the Niners track record at linebacker and along the interior offensive line in the mid to late rounds. And so that's kind of how I approach rounds 1 through 3. The Niners are at 11, 43, 75, and 100. And so even a player like Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky is a good slot corner if you want to keep Diamador Lenore on the outside, who you can probably get around pick 100. A lot of people thought that Renardo Green was a reach, including myself early on. I had him going in the 3rd or 4th round. Niners got him in the 2nd. And so that's kind of the strategy that I'm thinking of for rounds 1 through 3.